Now, the Middle East's longest ruling monarch, Oman Sultan Qaboos bin Said Al Said, has died aged 79. 3 days of mourning have been declared, and the process has begun to choose who will take over. Qaboos had no children and never publicly named a successor. He's credited with modernising the Gulf country and mediating between rivals in a volatile region. Rob Matheson looks back at his life.
Qaboos bin Said Al Said was an only son, born in 1940 to a life of royal privilege and to a father he would overthrow 30 years later.
What he did basically is modernizing the country, opening the country to the outsiders, and thirdly, looking at the domestic politics and try to move on to state formation, where building institutions and related elements.
Sultan Qaboos was educated in Oman and then at a private school in the UK before graduating from Sandhurst Military Academy and serving in the British Army for several months. On his return to Oman in 1966, his determination to modernise his country is said to have been ignored by his father. 4 years later, backed by the British, Sultan Qaboos seized the throne. He was immediately plunged into his first crisis, an uprising by communists in Dhofar in the south of Oman who wanted independence. It took a further 6 years before the fighting ended, with Oman being supported by forces from Britain, Jordan and Iran. Oman's links with Iran, as well as its foreign policy of maintaining good relations with other neighbouring countries, have made it one of the main negotiators in the Gulf.
Oman basically rely on its own understanding of geopolitics, being realistic, and also maintain its own legacy of being, the oldest state experience in the Gulf as a whole.
That flexible foreign policy has been controversial. In October 2018, Sultan Qaboos met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the Omani capital, Muscat. The meeting dismayed critics, who said Arab states should not be hosting Israeli leaders until peace was established between Israel and the Palestinians. Oman's foreign minister said his country was simply facilitating efforts towards negotiations. Sultan Qaboos had rarely been seen in public since he went through lengthy medical treatment in Germany in 2015. He was unmarried and had neither children nor siblings, and he did not publicly name a successor.
The foreign policy already was, I would say, dynamic, pragmatic, and also open to the idea of engaging with the international community. And that two dimension make me believe that we should not expect a major change.
Now the world waits to see who will replace a man who modernized his small Gulf nation and maintained a delicate balance of loyalties in an often unstable region.
Well, as reaction is felt throughout the region, we have Mohammed Al-Atta bin Sana. That's the capital of Oman's neighbour, Yemen. But first, let's talk to Asad Baig, who's in Tehran for us. Asad, it does seem that Iran has always felt they had a friend in Oman under Qaboos's leadership. How is he being remembered there?
Well, they've had a very close relationship for a number of years, even historically, even before before Iran became Islamic Republic of Iran. In the 1970s, when Oman faced a Marxist rebellion in the south, Iran, then ruled by the Shah, dispatched 4,000 soldiers. 700 Iranian soldiers died, and Oman has never really forgotten that. Oman has remained mainly neutral in the region. During the Iran-Iraq war between 1980 and 1988, there were secret talks held between Iran and Iraq in Muscat. Now, although nothing became of those, it helped reduce the mistrust between the two countries. And Oman supported a United Nations resolution asking for a ceasefire. And if I could just list some of the mediation that Oman has done with Iran or for Iran. So in 1991, they mediated between Iran and Egypt. In 2007, between the UK and Iran. In 2008 and 2009, the United States dispatched a high-level delegation to Muscat to discuss nuclear cooperation with Iran. In 2013, there were secret talks between the United States and Iran in Oman over Iran's nuclear program, which led to the 2015 nuclear agreement. Now, we know from former US diplomats that Oman approached the United States to start those talks, to say that there was a possibility of talks between the two countries. And Oman very much said to the United States that try and look at the region from an Iranian perspective. We've had issues of US hikers being detained in Iran, and Oman mediated the release of those. And also there were 4 Iranian nationals held in the United States, and Oman mediated the release of those Iranians. So they've had a very close relationship. Just back in April last year, there was a joint naval military exercise in the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, the two countries share that the narrowest point between the two countries in the Strait of Hormuz, that strategic waterway, is only 33 kilometers. So Iran holds Oman and the Sultan very close to their heart. And Oman has represented Iran in cases where the embassies have been closed, such as the United Kingdom and Canada.
Asad Baig there speaking to us from Tehran. Thank you, Asad. Well, now let's go to Mohammed Al-Atab in Yemen's capital. And Mohammed, we've been hearing there about the mediation efforts that Qaboos participated in the region. He also was very much the quiet diplomat when it came to trying to end the war in Yemen. Talk us through how he's now regarded in Sana'a.
Yes, the late Sultan Qaboos bin Said has played a major role in bringing to the negotiating table the warring sides, including the Houthis and also the internationally recognized government. He has also facilitated in some of the problems that faced Yemen, especially with the Saudi-imposed blockade and ban on Sana'a International Airport. He facilitated the medical flights and also the diplomatic flights. So the Houthis and all other politicians who want to travel outside the country used to travel from Sana'a to Oman. So the role that has been played during the last 5 years by Oman is admired by many people here in Yemen, especially that the Omani policy of friend to all and also an enemy to none has also helped Oman to thrive economically and also to have a good relationship with its neighbors. The current developments in the region and also the continuation of the war between the Saudi-UAE-led coalition and the Houthis will have also an impact in the developments after the aftermath of the death of the Sultan bin Qaboos. Especially many people hope that the Sultan bin Qaboos' successor would continue the march of Sultan bin Qaboos and also continue the mediation that has started by the Sultan himself. Also, many also suspect or expect that the successor will face difficulties, especially with the Saudi Arabia's attempts to pave its way for the oil pipeline through the Yemeni territories to the Arab Sea. In more than one occasion, the late Sultan Qaboos bin Said has faced many difficulties with Saudi Arabia, even though that he continued his policy of as a neutral. But such problem has caused him many challenges that could have started a war with Saudi Arabia with such attempts, even though that the tribes that have been backed by the Saudi Arabia have failed in order to give Saudi Arabia domination in Al-Mahra, which is in the border line with the Oman.
Mohammed Al-Atab there for us in Sana'a, Yemen's capital. Thank you, Mohammed. Well, Oman's Defence Council, that's made up of the heads of the armed forces and other security officials, has convened members of the royal family to choose a successor. They have 3 days to settle on who should take over, and if they fail to do this, they'll then turn to Sultan Qaboos's choice of successor. He wrote this in 2 identical sealed letters. There are 2 of them in case one of them gets lost. Now, that individual will then be revealed by Muscat's royal court before taking the throne. Well, joining us here in Doha is Majub Zubairi, who's director of the Gulf Study Centre at Qatar University. Majub, let's start with his legacy. When he took over, there were less than 10 kilometres of paved roads in Oman, and now we're seeing hospitals, we're seeing universities. How is he being remembered today?
I think to the Omani people, he will be remembered the leader who basically put together a modern Oman. And basically, when it comes to the state formation, state building, when it comes to the institution formation, when it comes to the infrastructure, when it comes including health, service, education, including focusing on a human being and trying to build the human capacity of Oman in the last 50 years. And I think all Omanis will remember this, will remember Sultan Oman, Sultan Qaboos because of that.
But despite his popularity, Majid, there were protests in Oman during the Arab Spring. Not hugely large ones, but there were protests, and there has been a crackdown.
The Arab Spring wave actually got to Oman in mid of 2011. And there was some demonstrations in Salalah, and I think also on Muscat, and almost demonstrations were focused on some requesting for more reform, actually, and for more salary increasing and all of this. I think the government also tackled them using all of their tools to calm down the situation, and that which caused at that time criticism from human rights organizations.
And has there been subsequent criticism? Because even though those protests weren't necessarily directed at him, there have been, well, I guess some laws changed.
I think the ruling family, and including the Sultan, they were clear on that, because they actually dismissed a lot of senior officials, cabinets, and actually blaming them for not doing their job properly. Any criticism, the criticism from a human rights organization focus on some legislation when it comes to the right for demonstrate, the freedom of speech, the freedom for assembly, and all of this. And it seems also the authorities have responded to that, and they have their own justification for some of those legislations. But it's again the whole development in Oman in the last 10 years approved to show that there is a serious leadership which basically managed to avoid, push the country out of any bad ramification on Oman.
Well, going beyond the borders, we were listening to our correspondents there tell us about how his mediation efforts almost made Oman a kind of Switzerland of the Middle East, a kind of neutral party, a space for mediation. Yes. And we've obviously seen heightened tensions in that region very recently. How is his death likely to affect things?
Interestingly, in 2008, he has an interview, Sultan Qaboos, with one of the Arabic newspaper, and he was asked about, what Oman is doing, and he said, very simple. We have no problem with anyone, and we don't add fuel to the fire. And that was how he defined basically the Omani role. Basically, I think the mediation effort. It was two things helped Oman to be mediator. One, the legacy of Oman. Oman is the longest state in the Gulf. It has more than 140 years. That's a good experience of statehood. The second one is actually, the style of leadership of Sultan Qaboos himself, and the way how to put together the state. I think that helped him. His experience being, graduated from Sandhurst did help him a lot, and actually also, being an open country, because Oman, when you speak about Oman, Oman was open to all nationalities for more than 100 years. And that basically made the country, the political culture of the country, more open, accepting the others. And I think this reflects on politics and on foreign policy. And I think that helped the decision makers to behave like this and not to be worried of being mediator and playing a role in a lot of conflicts.
Well, some very, very big shoes to fill there. Majid Zweri from Qatar University, thank you for joining us again here on Al Jazeera.